All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of our community poll. I think among the most notable things is that we are, as you all know, we've already been reusing the new version of the video bridge on Jitsi for a while. We're getting closer to also using it in our production deployments. That's just information for everyone out there who are wondering whether they should do so too. Boris, Jonathan, would you like to maybe add some more information here about the state of affairs?
So in the past few weeks, we've been closely monitoring the server instances and debugging and fixing various bugs. It was not intentional, I mean. Nothing major that I can think of, just internal bridge bugs. I don't know if I'm forgetting something, but Jonathan, feel free to add.
We're also working on getting, so I think there were a few updates on load balancing, right? Church, you want to talk briefly about that?
You were breaking up for me. Was it a question for me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I think we also did some improvements in terms of load balancing for the new bridge, right?
We are working mostly on the home. So we have implemented some changes. They're in a PR. I'm currently testing those. So we're load balancing based on the bitrate. Because it seems that's the most based on the testing that we have done, it's the most appropriate thing to do. Initially, we were thinking about basing it on the system load and maybe some computation that would involve both system load and bitrate. But now we're testing exclusively based on the bitrate, and my tests seem to giving good results. So probably we'll just end up with that. Yeah, mostly testing for now on that
And
scheme.
then we still consider Octo unfit for use in production, but we're soon going to start looking at that as well. Right, team?
Actually, I have a good feeling about Octo right now. I'm testing for the load balancing scheme testing that I'm doing. I have Octo enabled, of course, and it seems to be working relatively
With
well.
the changes that are currently in master?
With whatever we have in master, yeah.
Okay, great, fantastic. That's it with regard to the update there. Also, Christo has been doing a bunch of optimizations on Jitsi Meet, which we're primarily doing from the perspective of supporting larger conferences with more participants. But they are significant performance changes, performance optimizations, and should play a role even in smaller conferences. And so what I mean by larger and smaller is that we're targeting 100 and above, but probably the changes would make a difference even for 20 and below. Christo, I don't know if you want to add something there. He's not here, actually. So we did a change in the name server hosting for Jitsi. There were some attacks, so we moved it away from where it was to a new place. Everyone seems to have joined successfully. So I think we're probably good. But if someone notices issues, please let us know. Anyone else from the team wants to update on anything?
Quick update on GSOC. We were not accepted this year, so we're probably going to try again next year. But this year, there's not going to be any student projects, unfortunately. So is not able to make the call, but he asked that someone does an update for him. So for the mobile release, he has the following notes. There's been a new release that includes a new React Native version, and also Hermes on Android. The conference timer is now in, and on Android we have hardware accelerated decoding, but not encoding. That's all.
That's perfect. Yeah, and hardware accelerated encoding is likely not something we're going to attempt, given all the simulcast implications. All right, I guess anyone else from the team?
We did accidentally break the beta DNS record while porting over. That was over the weekend disabled, so if anybody noticed that, sorry. It's been fixed now, and somebody called it out in Discourse, so we appreciate that people are paying attention. Thank you.
Yes, Aaron, you forgot to mention that we intentionally broke it just to see if people are.
Oh, excellent point. That is always how we run our systems. Good point, Emil. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so no one else from the team. I suggest we open for questions from the floor.
Hi, this is Paul. I have a quick.
Hi, Paul.
How's it going? A quick sanity check question. Because we used to debate. So for the RTP time, I know should always be sort of increasing based on the sample rate of whether it be the audio or the video, 90,000. If for Jitsi, when you mute that, in that scenario, do we assume that the RTP time is continuing to increase, or is my understanding correct that like after a few seconds it basically stops the stream, and so we detect a gap when the stream unmutes?
Are you old bridge or new bridge in your deployment?
New bridge.
I think I'm not sure if Jonathan is here to comment on the audio stuff.
Yeah,
because
yes, I am here. Yes. Yeah. So the intention is that the timestamps increase continuously whether or not you're muted. I mean, if you're actually muted on the client and you're not sending media, it obviously depends on what the browser does. But my expectation would be that they would continue to increment timestamps when you're not there. If we're dropping silence packets on the bridge, then at least in New Bridge, the intended behavior, and I think hopefully the actual behavior, is that the timestamps will continue continuously during the silence. That's something we fixed recently, and it seems to have improved a lot of behavior in terms of lip-sync and the like.
Okay, so in the new bridge, because was this different in the old bridge? Because I feel like
I don't know the old bridge well enough, but I don't know.
I think
it
was different, because if I remember correctly, in the old bridge, after 3 seconds or something, it would basically stop the stream. So when you unmuted, you were effectively it was effectively a new stream. It may be the same SSRC, but and so as a result, you would very likely see a jump, and you would just rely on the sender report to sort of recalibrate, based on the most recent sender report, what the time is. But I think this new way certainly would be a lot simpler, because I think it can get very confusing with mutes. So can we just assume in the new world that it's always increasing, unless somehow we explicitly unsignal a stream, the
Yeah,
RTB
my expectation would be that as long as the SRC is the same, the timestamps are increasing, obviously modulo, it's cycling. So if it's out for a very long time, it might have cycled and you can't rely on anything. But for short periods of time, yeah, my expectation would be that the timestamps would be increasing in roughly corresponding to real time, up to the accuracy of various clocks.
Okay, great. So we've run into some issues in terms of like we're working on this recording implementation, the server side, where we lose a packet every once in a while from like a packet drop, and I guess as a result it was sort of shrinking. We'd be off by 20 milliseconds or off by 40 milliseconds. We were using sort of the old Opus decoder. Even in the new bridge, just sort of, and I wonder if maybe the problem is that we weren't in a perfect world. We should, even if it's just like an empty packet, we should probably force. I think what was maybe happening is the Opus decoder was not doing forward error correction, and so
yeah,
maybe,
there's ways you can get Opus to do both forward error correction and error concealment, which are, I've done this in previous job, but it's not always the most obvious API, as I recall. So,
okay, that's great. Thanks for clarifying that. That's great.
But the sequence numbers, what I would expect is if there's a loss, you would see a gap in sequence numbers. If there's a deliberate omission, then sequence numbers would be, if we've deliberately suppressed it, then sequence numbers would be compressed out. So generally, you can tell the difference because in a deliberate suppression, timestamps continue to increase, but sequence numbers stop. Whereas in a loss, obviously they both continue.
But would that would not be the case in muting, or would it?
So if you mute sequence numbers, if you deliberately muted, sequence numbers should pause, whereas timestamps will continue to go up.
Got it. Okay. That does make sense. Okay. So we should always just be able to compare the RTB time against the sequence numbers and then have validation. Basically, make sure there's never a gap in the sequence number. I guess one tricky thing, I guess, if you're dealing with Opus decoding and such is we have to make sure that the packet loss concealment and the forward error correction is in fact working. Otherwise, if it fails, and we don't want to give it a sort of like a placeholder packet due to some sort of packet drop, we want to make sure it doesn't just compress time and treat the next, the skip sequence number, the packet after the packet number that should be there. We want to make sure it handles that time, whether it be for forward error correction or otherwise. Otherwise, we'll be off by packets we drop. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. That's great. Appreciate it.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Hi, so this is Muhammad Abada here, and I just want to share with you that we are having a problem with the peer-to-peer quality recently. We never faced this issue before, so I'm not sure what is happening. One of the team suggested that we need to upgrade Chrome to the latest and Chromium as well. We did that, but it didn't help. So we tried the latest stable version, and we're still having the same issue. So I was wondering if you guys are working on anything similar.
You said peer-to-peer quality?
Yes.
So the call. You know that you have a problem with peer-to-peer quality. How?
We tested on your beta implementation. We tested on meet.jet. Sometimes we were able to reproduce it on the two environments. So it is not consistent. Sometimes we'll get the issue. Sometimes we'll not. It is happening under certain network conditions, which we're not clear about, to be honest. So we opened the ticket with you, Daryl,
managed to open a ticket, but we're not getting a solid response from your side, so we just thought to check within the call.
So
Hey, it's
peer-to-peer. Go
Hold
ahead.
on. Hey, it's Daryl here. I was just going to clarify a bit more. It seems on peer-to-peer calls the problem happens more so when it's on Wi-Fi rather than wired, and specifically it seems like it's an upload speed issue where the connection maybe like 2 meg up and down as you start the call, but then for the duration, all of a sudden the upload speed will drop on the peer-to-peer call to like 66 kilobits a second. And then stay there consistently for quite some time. Sometimes it doesn't go back up again, and sometimes it just stays there. So yeah, it's really hard to find when it happens, and we can seem to duplicate it on our infrastructure and also the beta Jitsi infrastructure, but not on the Meet Jitsi.
I'm curious if your connections are going through a turn server or whether you're actually establishing direct peer-to-peer.
So that's when it's got in brackets, it's got turn next to it. Most occasions, it's a peer-to-peer.
So when you're saying, just to confirm my understanding, when it just says P2P, you have the problem more often, but when it says turn, you don't as often?
Yes, that's what it seems like.
Okay, interesting. And is that the case in your infrastructure as well as on our servers?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have dev environment and we have a production environment. Currently, the production environment is using the latest unstable versions, in addition to our customization to the code. However, on dev, just for the troubleshooting purpose, we reverted the stable versions. But we're still getting the same issue across the two environments. So we're not sure what's happening.
From my understanding of network conditions specifically, peer-to-peer is the most susceptible to sort of network conditions because there's nothing in between you, right? You're just trying to negotiate between the two clients.
Yeah, so I wonder. So there, it's very hard to come up with a diagnosis. We've actually seen cases where, when using old bridge with old versions of Chrome, we had bandwidth estimations drop significantly more than they should, and we haven't seen that with new versions of Chrome on the new bridge. Now, peer-to-peer sounds, especially indirect communication, sounds extremely puzzling. And you could say, well, maybe it's a peering issue between the two endpoints that are doing it, unless they're in the same network, in which case, go figure. I mean, it's obviously very easy to punt it and say, well, something weird is happening in the network. Now, the problem is that you're saying you're not seeing this on certain infrastructures. So I guess I would ask you, how much of this is potentially, anecdotal with noise from other factors? If, like, the only way that comes to mind in which Chrome could be screwing that up, so obviously Jitsi can't screw up that connection, right? We're not anywhere on that path, so there's nothing we could do to make it bad. The only thing that I'm seeing is maybe, and I'm pulling this out of, maybe when you have multiple peer connections and we have one to the bridge that has no traffic and one direct, I wonder if there could be a bandwidth estimation issue, some sort of leakage between peer connections or something in Chrome, where the bandwidth estimations from one somehow impact problematically those from the other. But I'm just shooting off the hip here. I have no idea if that's really happening. I suspect the first thing I would do is make sure that from a network perspective, the channel between the two peers looks great with no loss, and loss would severely impact bandwidth estimations. So very aggressively, if packets are dropped, Chrome would just say, oh, okay, I don't have enough bandwidth. And it would drop very strongly. And it would have, even if you just drop a few packets every now and then, it would have trouble escalating back. So I would look at that first. But especially if you're saying you're not seeing that with turn servers, there's there's very little we could be doing there to screw this up. So I personally don't have any ideas. I don't know if anyone else in the team wants to check.
I may have one idea. So we do negotiate peer-to-peer connection just with whatever offer Chrome gives, but it goes through this Jingle to SDP translation layer. So I'm wondering, maybe there's something new in the SDP on the latest Chrome or something that is not translated correctly, and maybe it's lost on this layer. So I would suggest looking at the WebRTC internals and see what is the exact offer returned by Chrome in the create offer call, and then what is actually set as the remote description on the other side, and maybe see if something is lost there.
Yeah, sure. I can check that and I'll get back to you. And just to add here, when we turn off peer-to-peer, it is not happening. So when the calls are going through the Jitsi backend servers, we're not getting the same issue. And
that could still be what Pavel expressed, actually.
Yeah, and also it happened only when using Wi-Fi's. So
not always. Most occasions it's Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But occasionally it is wired. There's a problem we have with one at the moment where both connections are wired.
So just to be clear, have you tried the same network environment using other WebRTC peer-to-peer staging
we
other
tried
than Jitsi?
Yes.
We tested at AppRTC, but I didn't look at the call logs specifically on that yet. Just we looked at the quality and if it was acceptable or not. But yeah, well, I'll do some more testing on that as well.
And that was, you didn't look at the quality.
No.
I can just chime in here. We didn't have exactly the same issue, but we've had a similar, possibly similar issue. This sounds kind of intermittent in a way. It's hard to say if it's related or not, but you may want to check if you're testing on the same network every time or between the same two peers, if you have some kind of QoS configured, especially if it's like predetermined QoS where you just check a box and turn on QoS for media. A lot of times that's going to do kind of what Emil described, like Chrome is doing, where it has a very aggressive QoS application where if it drops out a little bit, it might reprioritize. And something like streams don't actually seem to benefit that well from that. I mean, a one-way stream where, like, say you're watching a YouTube video, it might help. But that's something that we ran into, maybe similar issues. We've disabled peer-to-peer entirely through the Jitsi configurations for a number of reasons, but we just weren't able to get into a situation where we could guarantee that one individual connecting from one part of the country or outside the country to somebody else inside the country, where it was going to be reliable. So I that's just something to look at as QoS settings, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for the tip.
Just this might lead me to the second question. If I know me and Daryl are debating over the peer-to-peer at the moment, but just to take an advice from you guys, how much of a cost savings would peer-to-peer give us in a production
That really
environment?
depends on the landscape of your users. We see differences in our different deployments. In some of them, we have one-to-one calls being upwards of 70% of all the calls. In others, it's less than 50%. So you are only able to answer those. But one of the reasons for enabling peer-to-peer is not necessarily just the cost savings.
Yeah.
It's also the fact that you get better quality, because once you go through the bridge, you're limiting the amount of adjustment you can do to bandwidth to only what's available through simulcast and temporal SVC. And you have multiple hops involved in the bandwidth negotiation, more likelihood of getting things wrong. So when bandwidth estimations and quality negotiation happen directly between the encoder and the decoder, you get much better results Not to mention just more trivial practical things like the bandwidth estimation algorithm and bandwidth adaptivity being updated in Chrome, and then you immediately benefit from these updates rather than having to wait for us to add the changes in the bridge. So we would never disable peer-to-peer, if to put it up.
Yeah, fair enough. Daryl, anything you would like to add on this?
No, thank you for the input. We'll continue testing and report back, and yeah, let you know how we get on.
Okay,
so
so
I was just looking at the logs that you guys send. There's not much I can see. It was indeed a peer-to-peer call. Send side bandwidth estimation was low, and CoStats says that the throughput was low. So that's all I can see. It looks kind of similar to an issue we experienced with the bridge with older versions of Chrome, where we couldn't really figure out why it's happening, but updating to 80 fixed it. So I don't know if you tried 80 already, but that might be.
yeah, we tried Chrome.
We have tried 80, yeah, it's still
Chrome
happening.
as well, so that didn't help.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate the help.
Okay, guys, thanks. So we'll try whatever you suggest, and I will report back on the same ticket. So let's see.
Yeah,
the
let's see
next
how-
question I have for you is how the progress with WebSocket integration? So,
WebSocket for the bridge?
Yes.
That's the only thing we use for quite a while, actually.
Do you mean WebSockets versus data channels or WebSockets versus Bosch? Because those are two separate.
Versus Bosch.
Oh, sorry.
Versus Bosch.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Then forget what I'm talking about.
Nice.
So it's kind of work in progress, because for mobile devices, we need to be able to resume the stream. So I'm working right now on the stream management implementation plugin for Strofe. But in general, it seems to be faster than Bosch. It's just single TCP connection. Yeah, we hope it should improve the stability, because we also had bugs around browser-D and item not found there, so connection was being dropped sometimes for no reason if the network is weird. Yeah, but it's looking good so far. We should have something maybe next week. You can see it's enabled on beta right now, I think. But like I said, on mobile, it will drop the connection whenever you change the network. So we need to work around that first.
And we also haven't quite resolved the issue around the way we're using stick tables for peering HA proxies as far as WebSocket connections goes. We may have to look at also keep alives or some other method for keeping the WebSocket alive so that we end up landing in the right place. So on beta right now, you can already see if you land on one of our shards, you may not always land on the same shard if you wait a long time before you join again. So that's something we're still working through as well.
I see.
Sorry, this is to support. So are you saying that the default is going to become WebSockets over Bosch?
At least for Meet Jitsi.
Okay. And when is that expected, or is that in PR right now, or what's the? Sorry, I didn't get all of the, like in terms of the things that we can expect not to work. You're saying the mobile is the issue right now is mobile in terms of supporting that, or?
Yes. So issue is actually anytime the OS would kill the connection when network interface changes or something like that, it breaks the connection, and on Meet Jitsi you would see a page reload. So it's just basically trying to handle this case when OS kills the socket and we need to be able to resume the stream. So that's work in progress, but we're actively working on that right now. So there should be something out in the following weeks.
Okay, but it does work on the website. You're saying it works. It's pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Okay.
So remember that web does not necessarily mean not mobile. The case where somebody's on a train and their network, even if they're on a laptop, their connection can fall over all the time. So
Sure.
Yeah.
But and then the Prosody plugin to enable WebSockets, is that in the Jitsi Meet repo?
No, that's actually part of the Prosody itself.
It's part of Prosody.
They implemented WebSocket just the same way they implemented Bosch. And we have some updates to some of the things that interact, like for the session management, we've submitted some patches to the WebSocket module to make sure that it handles the off case when we're handling JWT tokens and all that. And that should be in the latest 0.11 that's going to be coming out, I think, in the next little while. I think 0.11.6 was going to be the number. I was talking to Matthew about it a couple weeks ago, and he got it merged into the mainline there, but I don't know when the latest packaging would happen.
That's great. Will it still fail over to, or fall back to Bosch in, I don't know, in the rare case that somehow?
Well, basically it's a parallel path, right? So you configure a new URL on the Prosody side, and then you configure the config.js to talk to WSS://URL instead of HTTPS, and use that new path, XMPP WebSocket, instead of HTTP bind. So you'd be able to have clients on either, depending. In fact, that's how we had beta working right now, where the mobile client's still using the Bosch setting, but the web client can use the WebSocket setting if it's provided.
I see. But we should be able to set config.js so that if WebSocket fails, to then try Bosch on web, or?
I don't think that's how the logic works today, at least. I think that would be a libjitsi Meet implementation, right? Like how it handles Stroff errors in case of WebSocket.
Got it. Okay.
But the option is there at the moment to use both, I think. But there might be some client stuff involved.
Yeah, I think WebSocket is pretty well supported across the board. So I assume it'd be pretty rare for where WebSocket would not work, but Bosch would. But I guess in terms of it's possible though. That's great. Yeah, I'm excited to check that out.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining.
All right. Well, that was a good discussion. Any other questions? In that case, I am going to close the call, and we'll see you again all in 2 weeks. Thank you very much for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.